One of the great joys for me in this run has been the opportunity to speak to civic groups like you all. And I have said to them, and I will say to you the same thing, this is the educator in me, I want to keep promoting this. You all not only are serving your community in the most obvious ways, but one of the other ways that you're serving the community is the fact that these types of civic organizations are crucial to democracy as a whole. There are studies that show a correlation between the number of people in a community who are involved in neighborhood watch groups, Rotary Club, Lions Club, Kiwanis, PTA, and the success and efficiency of democracy. In other words, the more people in groups like this, the more the democracy is efficient and stable. And the reason for this correlation is because what you all do as a group is practice democracy. You learn to listen to each other. You learn to communicate to one another. And my daughter Callaway is a fifth grader at Glenbrook Elementary. My mother loves it, so she's raised her hand too. I want to point out my daughter is also the president of the Student Government Association at Glenbrook. So like a lot of families, I have followed her political footsteps. I decided to run for this office because I have just worked in Virginia politics too in the last 15 or 20 years, where we treat our allegiance to our political parties like we treat our allegiance to our favorite sports teams. When there and suddenly we're all singing Kumbaya and holding hands together. But I do think that gradually, if we each election begin to elect candidates who want to put cooperation over political allegiance and allegiance to the corporations that fund our campaigns, then I think things will change. I'm a conservative Democrat. I consider myself to be a blue dog Democrat, which places me in the moderate zone of the entire political spectrum. My opponent is not a moderate. And I believe that the issues that we face in this state, which are extremely serious, are not going to be solved by the extremists on either end. It will be solved by those people who are in it. I'm sorry that my opponent's not here. And I, unfortunately, unlike Sarah and Ed, where they're running for an open seat, I'm challenging an incumbent. So I have to tell you why I'm a better choice than him in ways that you all probably ought not do. And I'm not really comfortable doing that with him not here. I have to admit that to you. But I will say that everything I'm going to say about him, I said to him Monday night. So with that said, let me start kidding. What I want to focus on to show you the differences between my opponent and I is one issue. I support a 30-cent increase on a pack of cigarettes. The medical community is in complete agreement that there is nothing that we can do to harm your health more than smoking. So if cigarette smoking causes health issues, cigarette smoking causes a rise in healthcare costs. Healthcare costs that all of us Virginians are having to pay, primarily through Medicaid. So a 30-cent increase on a pack of cigarettes would bring to the state $148 million a year. It would then offset the rising cost of Medicaid, which is rising largely as a result of smoking. If we raise cigarette tax by 30 cents on a pack, we will still be only the 40th lowest state for cigarette tax. Only 10 other states would have a lower tax than us with the 30-cent increase. My opponent is opposed to this, and he said in our first debate that he opposes it because it would put an undue burden on the poor in this state. If you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, and you cannot afford the additional 30 cents for this pack of cigarettes, then what you have to do is you have to give up 2 cigarettes a day. My opponent believes that we can't ask Virginia citizens to give up, who smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, to give up 2 cigarettes. I find that to be extremist. That's not moderate. That's ideological rigidity. It is not the kind of mentality that's going to lead us out of this maze of problems that we face. The tobacco industry in Virginia, the cigarette industry in Virginia is not dependent upon cigarette smokers in Virginia. It's dependent upon the cigarette smokers in the 49 other states in the United States and the cigarette smokers in other countries. It will not cost jobs in Virginia. In fact, this study suggests it might increase jobs because of the revenue by the tax itself by health-related issues being declined and therefore people being more productive at work. And lastly, some people would actually give up smoking, and that money then would be spent into the economy, creating more jobs. He said in our debate that the cigarette tax increase would be an undue burden on the poor. I find it curious that my opponent champions himself as a friend of the poor when he voted to reject $125 million of stimulus money to go for people in Virginia who don't have jobs. 270,000 Virginians that are out of work. There are Virginians who can't put food on the table, who can't afford clothes for their children, who can't pay their mortgages. We need that money, and this is federal stimulus money. We're all going to pay back all the stimulus money at some point. So if we don't use that money, it goes to some other state. So some guy in California is using our $125 million of stimulus money, and we're going to pay it. And my opponent's reason was it would be an undue burden on businesses. Once again, an undue burden. In this case, the undue burden. The condition of accepting that money would be that business owners would have to pay $4.50 for each one of their employees. So if I'm a part-time owner business owner, and I have 10 employees, some part-time, some full-time, it would cost me $45 a year. That's it, $4.50 per employee per year. That's the undue burden. If we can't ask that much of one another, how are we going to solve these problems? It seems to me we have to elect reasonable, moderate, common-sense politicians to get us through this maze of job loss, of underfunding, of increasing education costs, and the underfunding of our transportation system. Extremists are not going to solve these problems. So I'm a moderate Democrat. I don't want to raise taxes. I want to raise taxes on pack of cigarettes. That I want to say up front. I want to find other ways of solving our problems without raising taxes. But it will require some